Hey everybody, Lindsay here, Heritage Stables, Peppy, and Sunny over there, and we are going to do our, as promised, our picking out your feet, or your hooves, I should say, can and should be easy video. I will be starting with Peppy. The reason I'm starting with Peppy is because he is barefoot, so we're going to start out talking about how to get the foot up, what you're trying to accomplish when you're picking out the hoof, and some of the anatomy that you're looking to check, and how that looks and what it's what the names are of the different parts of the hoof that you'll see from the bottom. So I wanted to use him because he doesn't have shoes, and then I have Sunny out here. We'll look at him next, and he does have shoes on all 4 feet. But this guy is barefoot, so we'll be able to see a little more clearly what the bottom of a horse's foot looks like and what the different parts of that anatomy are. So let's get started. I have in my pocket here my hoof pick. I really love the ones that have kind of the rubber grip on the handle. My favorite color is blue, so that's why it's blue. And I love the ones that have the brushes on them, along with a fairly narrow pick surface there. You can see, and I'll show you when you get picking out a horse that has shoes on, the narrowness of the pick becomes a little bit more important in its function to kind of get under the heels of the shoe. And you'll see that here in a little bit. But let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to bring you over here and sit you down. So, when you're picking out a horse's feet, we want to stand next to them, but facing in the opposite direction, right? So, his feet are pointed that way, and my feet are pointed this way. I think I can probably arrange this a little bit better, you know? Let's try this. There we go. Yeah, so here, and you'll be able to see, I'll show you from a different perspective once I have this foot up, that I'm standing next to his shoulder, but I'm not kind of like up under him yet. I'm just standing next to him, okay? So from here, I'm just going to take my hand, that shoulder that's closest to him, start up here by his elbow and just touch him and start to run my hand down. He is great at picking out his feet, so you just touch him and he pretty much picks it up for you, okay? So that's super easy. One of the things you'll notice is every now and then he kind of like wiggles and he tries to take it and put it back down. The easiest way I have found to prevent that, and I teach this to my students, is point the toe to the belly. Because if you keep this pastern and fetlock joint flexed this way, up towards their belly, it's very difficult for them, even if they swing it forward to try to pull it away. If you just keep that toe pointed up, kind of towards their belly, or even eventually to their elbow if they pull it far enough forward, right there, they're not going to be able to get it back down. So you could even just use a couple fingers here at the toe, and the horse can be kind of wiggling and pulling, and you'll just be able to hold on to it. A lot of times people get into kind of wrapping their fingers around the pastern here, trying to hold on, and as soon as that toe starts to go down, you can see he's kind of already feeling like he should put his foot down because that toe is pointed down, right? But if I just take my fingers and point that toe back up, everything stabilizes and relaxes, okay? So that little joint structure staying flexed is important for the horse to be able to relax and for you to be able to hold on to that foot, and then also simply for me to be able to visualize this foot, the bottom of this foot. Okay. Alright, so let's talk about what the foot looks like from the bottom here, okay? So this is his front foot. He's a little, as you can see, he's barefoot. And I'm going to switch over to a farrier's hold here so that I can hold my camera phone and pick out the foot at the same time. So I'm just going to slide this one knee over and around to this side, and then just kind of pinch it between my knees like this here. So a couple of things we're looking at when we're looking at the bottom of his foot here is you can see there's a little bit of a triangular structure here in the middle, and then a rim around the outside edge here, okay? And there's this triangular structure here is called the frog, and there's these deep grooves on either side of it, and that's usually what we're looking to pick out when we pick out the bottom of the horse's foot. So I'm going to take my hoof pick and just show you. We're going to kind of, yes, you see all that came out? Focus, camera, focus. There we go, yeah. So you can compare to this side where all the dirt is still in there. And I'll come around over here and pick that out too. And you can kind of take it this way a little bit to get the edges of the heel done. Run my brush over the rest of this. And sometimes, depending on how much of a hoof wall they've grown, you can kind of come around the edges here, and there's a little bit of dirt around the outside edge. Oh, baby. And look at that too. Maybe check the center cleft of the frog. See if it's sensitive or how deep it is. His is not very deep. You can just kind of fit the tip of a hoof pick in there, which is a little more than ideal, but not terrible. So, what are we looking at here? We have a sole right here, all of that. The frog, like we talked about earlier, which is this part up the middle, this kind of triangle. They're usually called the, there's a couple different names, these grooves on either side of the frog here. They're either called the collateral sulci or the commissures. And so those are, or I just call them the grooves on the sides of the frog, but if you're looking through an anatomy book, those will be the official definitions. And then the rim that runs along the edge here, that's the bar that kind of helps form this groove. And then that comes into this angle here at the heel, and then it shifts and comes around into a wall. This is where the wall on the outside here comes down to the edge of the foot. So you have your hoof wall that goes all the way around. His is a little jagged because he's due for a trimming. So that's one of the nice things about picking out your horse's feet regularly, is that you can notice the quality of the foot they have. But that hoof wall comes all the way around. Same thing on this side. We have our little angle here into our bar, right? And then you have these little bulbs of the heel back here, the little squishy spots here and here. Those are called the heel bulbs. And you can kind of see it at the front here. There's a little bit of a very faint line or a groove, hold still baby, where the sole here and the hoof wall here meet, right? They come together. That's called the white line. Okay, so a couple things we're looking for. You can see how the, it's kind of black right here and right here. Not so much, but a little bit. That could be a sign of early stage thrush. Thrush is an anaerobic bacteria that basically starts to rot the hoof wall away. The reason I bring that up is because when we were talking about the white line just a second ago, if you've ever had white line disease, it's a very, if I remember right, it's the same bacteria as thrush. It's just like if they've got a little crack or a notch in the front of their hoof wall, or like on the edge here where it gets a little jagged, that bacteria gets up in the white line and travels up and creates a fissure and sometimes even lameness, because up underneath this hard sole and hard hoof wall are some very sensitive structures. The lamina are quite sensitive, the digital cushion, all of that, and like lateral cartilages and the coffin bone, all the blood vessels and nerves and different ligaments surrounding those, they're all quite sensitive. So this appears quite impenetrable and wonderfully strong. It's the same stuff as our fingernail, just millions of times thicker. This keratinized sole and hoof wall tissue, epithelial tissue. But that's the basic structure of a horse's foot, and what we're looking to check, what we're looking at, and what we're checking for. Something like that, like, oh, thrush, I want to make sure we clean that out. Different things like that when we're picking out their feet, okay? And I've just been doing my little farrier hold here. You've probably seen he's kind of like toggled it a couple of times. The nice thing about the farrier grip is that it's quite stable, actually. And it allows me to have both hands free to talk about this. And if you have thrush, I'm going to go ahead and put this down for a second. If your horse has thrush in one of its hooves, one of the things you can do is a dilution of water and bleach, and put that on that hoof. Right, Peppy? Put that on that hoof, especially if you have a pretty deep area, like if that groove on either side of the foot has gotten really deep, then you know the thrush, the bacteria, is starting to actually eat away at that groove and the structure there. The frog is a softer kind of cushion in the bottom of their foot, like a shock absorber, and the groove where it connects to the harder sole, that epithelial cells, keratinized epithelial tissue, is pretty easy to kind of eat away when the bacteria gets going. But like I said, a dilute of bleach and water doesn't take very much bleach in the water. I'm trying to remember what the exact ratio, at least like a 1 to 2 would be the maximum. You could probably even do a little bit less than that. Just kills that bacteria the bleach does, Clorox. And you're good to go. Okay, let's talk about the back legs. So some of the structure that you're looking at in the leg, you can see already the joints are shaped pretty differently. We've got our stifle joint up here at the top that's very similar to our knee. It's got a kneecap or a patella kind of right there in the front. We've got this kind of triangularly shaped hock joint here. And then they have on all 4 legs these fetlock joints down here at the bottom. I didn't really talk about it on the front leg, but just as a point of reference, that knee joint functions very similar to our wrist in how it flexes. So with the hind leg, we have our stifle, our hock, fetlock, and then there's a much smaller set of bones right through here, pastern bones that form a pastern joint. It's not quite as flexible, not as much of a range of motion across here, but a little bit, okay? So a couple of things about the back legs. They're a little bit harder to pick out because the horse has a little more difficult time helping you support his weight. They can, don't get me wrong, you shouldn't feel like you're holding your horse up while you're picking out their feet, but it's a little harder for them to support it because these joints all function best if they lift straight up and go under, land, and then the body passes over them, right? Like the body, as they're in motion, when you watch horses moving, the body weight passes over the leg, and just as it starts to go out behind them, they pick it up and do it all over again, right? So it doesn't spend very much time out behind them, but that's exactly where we take it to pick out their feet, is we kind of carry it out behind them, kind of the direction. It's really not easy for them to go, and that they themselves don't hold it in that position for extended periods of time. Once it gets kind of extended out behind them, they know, oh, we've got to bring that back up. So some horses in the beginning, especially when you're dealing with young horses, they kind of resist that. But it's mostly because the joint structure, it feels a little unnatural to go out behind. So let me move him slightly so I've got a better camera angle here for you guys, because he's shifted slightly. Good boy. Look at this beautiful tail. Alright, so when I ask my horses to, same thing, I'm kind of standing here. My toes point opposite direction, run my hand down. He's wonderful, so he's already lifting up, shifting his weight. No, I need this one, buddy. There we go. And a lot of times you see they lift it straight up and a little bit forward, right? So he brings it here. That's okay. A lot of times I'll catch it there and then bring this hand underneath and kind of stretch it out, and there he starts to resist a little bit. If they resist, just wait. Just wait for a second and they'll, yeah, there you see, feel he'll come up, you'll feel them relax into it and let you kind of pull it out behind them, okay? So a lot of similar structures, actually all the same structures that we're looking at in the foot here, mostly just looking to clean out these 2 grooves on either side of his frog. They're really shallow in his foot here because this foot is actually, hasn't had shoes on it for longer than his front feet. So this frog is a little wider, and there's really almost no groove worth speaking about in the middle of the frog here, which is nice. It's a nice healthy foot, nice healthy frog with shallow grooves. We're not worried about any thrush back here. This foot looks great. There's hardly anything to pick out really. And we're good to go. If they do that, where they pick it up and they kind of flex it and shake it back and forth like that, I just kind of loosen up my elbow, my shoulder, and kind of move with them until they relax, and then I stretch it back out back here behind them, because it's a little easier for me to work on it here than with it up underneath here. It's a little harder for me to get up under it and see it. So I do want it back here. Your farrier is going to want it back here, so your horse is going to need to practice this position, right? A farrier is actually going to kind of lift it a little higher and put it between his knees right here like this, okay, so he can work on it. Or he may have a little stand that has like a little cup on it, and he'll set it on his stand, and they'll just kind of rest there like that while he works on it. All right, let's take a look at a horse that has some shoes on. All right, let's talk about a front foot with some shoes on it. This is Sunny's foot here. You can see he's got a nice little natural balance shoe on with 3 nails placed on each side. One of the nice things about picking out your horse's feet before every ride at least is you get to visualize all of that. I can see he's still got all 3 of his nails in place. Shoe looks like it's still pretty tight. And now we'll get down to cleaning out this foot. I tend to always start at the heel here, kind of get my pick in right there, and then pull down towards the toe, kind of away like that. Kind of see how that exposes the frog there a little bit. Same thing over here. Wiggle that in, pull down, around the edge of the shoe here, down around the front. Okay. This is where the thin edge of the hoof pick comes into play. It's tough to get all the dirt out kind of underneath the heels of the shoe here. But if you have a narrow hoof pick, you can kind of come from the front and the back and slide it under and get that all loosened up so it comes out. So you get that groove all the way out the back here. See, and the hoof pick comes out, cleaned out really thoroughly. You can see that. His frog is a little wider. Grooves kind of look a little deep right here. Might have to put some thrush medication on that. Oh, I was talking about my Clorox and bleach dilution earlier. Obviously, there's all kinds of products you can buy at places like Tractor Supply or anything that sells horse products, right? Because they'll sell you Thrush Buster, Copper Tox, some of the more common ones. That's a really nice clean foot right there. I'll close off that light there so it's easier to see. Nice deep, well, not nice because they're deep, but nice clean grooves there. The central sulcus here is a little bit deeper than I would like. I can kind of fit most of my pickup in there. I put some bleach water in there here in just a minute. But that's a front foot. Again, with my little farrier hold here. Kind of fix this here. Pick it up in between my knees and hold it like that. Look, Mom, no hands. Okay, a back foot with shoes. Same thing. We're gonna stand here next to it. Oh, where you going, buddy? Okay, so he's picking that up there. Sometimes they do that where they'll shift a little bit and they'll move themselves somewhere else to before they pick their foot up for you. I don't usually get too picky about that, honestly. I'm gonna move you guys over here. I've got you sitting on a little stool so you can see. Here we go. Good boy. He's a little bit more relaxed, so he's already got his foot kind of out here behind himself. There you go. And it's pretty packed full. So again, I'm starting up here at the heel, picking down towards the toe on either side of the frog so I can visualize that first. Okay? And then I usually go out around the rim of the shoe because that's just pretty easy to kind of wedge the pick up against the shoe and then just kind of scrape along the edge there, and then I usually just run the brush over it, getting the other loose dirt out, and then I'm going to take my little pick and run it up under these heels, like what I showed you on the front foot. Get the end of that heel groove nice and clean. His heel is a little bit deep in the center here, the frog as well. Nice, Sonny, thanks. So same thing, 3 good nails still on each side. The shoe is in really good shape. Hoof wall seems like it's good. So everything checks out here. Let him put that down. Something that's good to remember with the hind feet, well, front and hind, really, let me block that light there for you guys, is, I'll ask him to pick this up again. Hey buddy, can you pick this up? Is to keep in mind that I'm standing to the side of his leg here, but I'm not pulling his leg sideways to me. He's pretty flexible, so he's letting me pull it out to the side here like this, but he's only gonna, yeah, see there, he's already starting to bring it back a little bit. I'm not gonna fight that, I'm just gonna let him bring it back. You wanna let them keep it in kind of a straight line under their body. Same thing with the front legs. If you try to pull it out to the side, that torques those joints a little bit, and they might let you do it for a little while, but eventually they're gonna say, ow, I need that back over here. And they'll start to try to resist and bring it back to that kind of midline right underneath their shoulder, or in his case, his hip right here, up over the top here. All right. Okay, I wanted to just take a quick second and show you what I was talking about with the Clorox in the center sulcus groove here of the frog. This is my little, whoops, just knock that over there, Lindsay. It's actually like I think it used to be like a plant food bottle. I need to remark bleach on there. Oh yeah, Miracle Grow. And we just fill it up with water and a little bit of bleach. And it's nice because the little tip fits up in there nicely. And I'll just squeeze it a couple of times. Usually you can kind of see a little dribble start to come out on the other side below the groove. Yep, and that's when you know you've got it. I'll just kind of hold it up for a couple of seconds. Let that all seep in. And then put it down. So that's how I do that. If that center sulcus gets a little thrushy, a little bit deeper than it's supposed to be, and cooking a little bit of bacteria in there, we'll stick a little bleach water in there to clean it out. One other quick note about picking out horses' feet, and especially these front feet, or any well, I say front feet, but any shoe that, any hoof that has a shoe on it. Got to get my words here. And that is, a lot of times you'll see with beginner horsemen that they'll do this little scraping motion here. Like, oh, it'll come eventually. And you can see I'm making some progress. The mud's a little soft because we got some rain last night. So it's coming out. And I'm going to be at that for a while, right? Whereas if I just start up here at the top and pull all the way down to the toe, I've already got that groove cleaned out, right? And then if I go over here and do the same thing, all the way down, easy baby, then I've already got that groove all the way cleaned out, okay? So something to think about with that, especially if you tend to be a little bit that way yourself. Don't be afraid to like find the tip right here and just pull down, and then find the tip and then pull down like that, and then follow the edge of that shoe all the way around and then brush it out. You don't have to kind of gently scrape around. You know, they're big animals. They walk on this structure on their foot. The bottom of the hoof is for walking on and supporting weight. So you can dig around in here pretty tough before they're going to say ow at all. So there's another nice clean front hoof with a shoe on. The center sulcus of this frog is great. See, it's like, can't fit it in at all. This one looks great, so glad I treated those other two. Okay, so let's talk about teaching your horse to pick his feet up a little bit. I'll give you a couple of tips on that. I've started a number of young horses. Come on, buddy, can you step up? I don't want you to get pulled back in the horse. Here we go. One more. One more. Okay. One more. There we go. Obviously, not every horse knows how to pick their feet up as well as the two that I was just demonstrating with here today. The two ways I have learned, and I learned this from Pat Farrelly's home study program back when I was teaching Peppy over here how to pick his feet up, because he was the first young horse I really started myself. He was 18 months old when I got him. So, you know, he was the first one. I used the Farrelly home study program to do that because I needed some guidance. I was only 15 years old, so kids, don't try this at home. Anyway, what they have you do is they have you, for the front feet, they have you pinch the chestnuts on their legs. Now the chestnuts are these little calluses. I'll try to show you here. I know they're a little ticklish, so that's why he moves every time I try to show you. Yeah, this little callus on the inside of his leg. They have them above the knees on both of their front legs. They have them on their hind legs as well. Come back here and show you. Get his tail out of the way. Right here below his hock. Right? So they're below the hock joint down here on the hind legs, and they are above the knee right here on the front legs, but they're on the insides of the legs on all four. Okay? So that is a pretty sensitive little spot. If you take your fingertips and you kind of pinch it a little bit, see how he already moves his leg? I can reach in and do this one right here, and he'll pick this leg up. So that's a pretty fun little trick you can use for a horse's front legs to have them kind of want to pick up their legs for you. It's really good for young horses when you're teaching them to pick up their legs, because it makes them want to shift their weight off of it and kind of pop it up for you, at least pop the knee up a little bit. So when I'm training young horses to pick their feet up really well, I'll, stand here by their withers at the shoulder here as it carries down. You really need to stay standing up here, buddy. Okay? And then run my hand down, and he knows already at this point because he's a very experienced horse, and he'll just give me his foot. But if they delay it and they just let you kind of pet the back of their leg, because they don't know, they're like, oh, I guess she's just going to pet my leg here, then I would pinch that chestnut there, and see, he kind of just shook his leg, like, lady, I already give it to you. But you can see how it would do that. Or if I put this one down, and I want to reach across and look at the other one over here, I can do it like that. See, and he'll give me that one really easily on the opposite side. Which you can do that. You can pick their feet up, both legs from the same side if you want. That's a thing. More of a kind of a racetrack thing, but it's totally a thing. Come on back up here, buddy. There we go. So that's an easy way to get them to shift their weight off of that leg. If they're one of those horses that tends to kind of want to put a lot of weight down in the leg once they pick it up, again, like I said before, really just keeping that toe pointed up for me is the best way to teach them, because they can kind of drop into that shoulder a little bit and try to lean on you, but I can kind of stand out away from him here and just keep that, right? It's not that hard. And then I can just let it go when I'm finished. Let's talk about the hind legs. Okay, so let's talk about helping horses pick up their hind legs. So you have the point of their hip, which is this little knob kind of right here that fits in the palm of your hand pretty well. And the point of their buttock, which is just the outermost rounded point of their hindquarter right here. And I usually kind of stay kind of in between those two. Same thing, running my hand down. And if they don't get it, like if they just sit there when you run your hand down, the point of their hock joint right here, we're not going to pinch the chestnut like we did on the front. We're going to just take our fingertips and just kind of pinch the skin at the point of their hock joint right there. Yeah, and see how he just pops that right up for me? And same thing, he's a little more prone to keep his leg out behind him here than Peppy was, so that's great because I can already just get my position here. And then let him put it up underneath himself to put his foot back down. With the horse's hind legs, if they're leaning into you a lot with that and trying to kind of put a lot of weight on you as you're holding their leg up, I have a certain amount of weight that's more than what they have with the front leg that I'm willing to support with the hind leg, simply because you can see this whole structure here. This joint and this joint are not really built as easily as that knee joint in the front to support the weight and hold it up. So it kind of tends to hang down a little bit more into this hoof right here, as you can see from that angle, right? Across here. So I will support a little more weight in the hind end, but I'm not going to hold this up for them. And it's a little bit the same thing. You want to be able to support this toe here. I wouldn't recommend standing out behind like this, but I'm doing this for the sake of showing you guys an angle. Okay? But kind of take your left hand across the back of their leg here. This back of their they have this cannon bone in the front. All these tendons run down the back. Take your arm across and cut this hoof wall with your fingers right here. You can kind of have that support and just kind of hover with them wherever the foot moves, but try not to like crank it up and make it more of a uncomfortable struggle for them than you need to. And they'll get to the point where they can just kind of hover and support their own weight. If you have an obstinate horse that's trying to pull the legs away from you all the time, if you're more of a beginner, I wouldn't recommend that you try to just like wrestle the leg, especially the hind legs. Don't try to like grab onto it more and hold it closer to your body, because they're really good at just kind of shaking you off a little bit to the kind of out to the front and the side a little bit. They'll just kind of shake you off a little bit if you really try to control it. With the hind leg, I'll do a couple of things. I'll kind of go back and forth with the young horses. If they're here, I just keep this hoof cupped right here and kind of move with them and hang on to it. Sometimes they'll start to pull it really far up this way, and I'll just kind of cup it here, maybe with the other hand, until they relax, and then try to take it out behind. If they're kicking at me, get out of the way. And you can kind of pop them up here on the belly I'm just patting him because obviously he's being good. But you can kind of get out of the way and kind of pop him a little bit like, no. So that they understand that that's not a desirable behavior for you. Let's see. If they're obstinate about the front legs, that's much easier to solve. Again, you can just keep that toe pointed up towards their belly. I don't usually find that too many horses are difficult. It's usually they just kind of want to lean that shoulder down on you, and supporting that toe and being able to just kind of stand out away so that your shoulder isn't touching their shoulder kind of keeps that from becoming a thing for most horses. With your young horses, do this frequently. Like I ride 5 days a week or more, and I pick their feet up before every ride because I have a gravel driveway right here in front of my barn, so they're walking across gravel fairly regularly, so I want to be checking to make sure they don't have a rock wedged up in there. I want to make sure that their shoes look good if they're wearing shoes. If they're barefoot, I just want to see how the integrity of the hoof wall is holding up. Just check and make sure those little grooves are healthy and we don't have any of that thrush bacteria growing in there. We're checking them on a regular basis to make sure that things are going well. But in the process of doing that, the other thing that we're doing is we're practicing, right? For those young horses, we're practicing picking that foot up and holding it and cleaning it out. Practice your farrier holds with the young horses. You know, practice putting it up here between your knees and just letting them relax into that for a little while. Once they do relax, let it down, right? And just do that a couple of times because they'll kind of be a little bit like, at first, and they might have a little bit of tension and try to rebalance themselves. And once they find that new balance and relax, let it go, put it down. And then you can pick it up and do that a couple of times. Come on, buddy. There you go. Pick it up, do it again. You can even take your hoof pick and kind of tap on the sole like I was doing with Peppy earlier, or on the actual hoof itself. If you have a little hammer around your barn, you can tap on them with a hammer and things like that. Just get them ready for that experience with the farrier. Because we love our farriers, we want the horses to do well for them so that they're safe and they're easy. A horse that behaves itself is much more likely to be well loved in its lifetime than one that's allowed to be a little obstinate or just ignorant. You know, if it doesn't know how to pick its feet up well or do that well, you know, don't be that person that kind of lets. Here's a tractor going by. Don't be that person who lets your horse be a little ignorant and therefore kind of hard to handle and ends up not being as well liked or appreciated over the course of its lifetime. Let's see, what else are we going to talk about? Tips for helping the little peoples, picking out feet. I talked earlier about how beginners tend to kind of want to scrape at the surface, just show them that groove at the top of the heel and how they can really dig in there. That's really a helpful thing for the kiddos. I put some photos up on our Heritage Stables Facebook page about 3 days ago, showing how I help support the leg for especially the little kids, because obviously the little kids, two things, they're usually intimidated holding a big foot up, and then second of all, they're usually a little bit like not strong enough to hold the leg themselves if they're really little, like those 7 and 8 year olds. Once they hit about 10, they're pretty good. They can do a lot of it by themselves. Maybe I have a couple. I have one 8-year-old who's like, she's just all in there picking out the feet all by herself. And if they're doing it by themselves and they're enjoying that, I will let them do it by themselves, and then I'll come back around and check behind them. So they usually don't get it quite as clean. Sometimes they do, don't get me wrong, but I usually just check behind them, just make sure that they've got that foot really, really clean. Okay? In those photos, I'll just show you a couple of things. One of the ways I help support the hind leg is by cupping the base of the hock joint right here, and you can see how my leg is coming under the gaskin right here, out to the inside of their leg and just around, wrapping around the back of their hock joint right here. Okay, so I can support his leg because of how my shoulder is just kind of in line, sliding right in here, and then just supporting it. I can sit here for a few minutes while the kid is in front of me with the hoof tipped up and they're picking the foot out right there. I can do that for a few minutes to help them get that experience of picking out a horse's foot fairly independently, and then as they get better at supporting that weight themselves, they'll be able to do it by themselves. let's see, let me move you guys here real quick. Come with me. And I'll show you the front foot. Like I said, you can check out those photos on my Facebook page. Here we go. Yeah, we can see that pretty good. So with the front feet, obviously they're holding the hoof up right there, and I usually stand kind of here and support, depending on how high the horse's knee is, I'll kind of put it to my thigh right here. And they're, like I said, they're up there holding the hoof, and I just kind of stand here. I'll switch legs, hands so you can see. They're holding the hoof, and I just kind of touch my leg to the horse's knee, and then take my hand in here behind the knee and the lower part of the forearm here to support that, so the horse can't kind of toggle back and forth too much and maybe throw the kid's balance off slightly and just maybe. Usually the little kids are easily intimidated, or the beginners in general are easily intimidated, like trying to hold the hoof up if the horse moves at all. So those first couple times they do it, just kind of supporting it here while they hold it. If they weren't holding it, it would look like this, but that's a little bit, he's being very good. Good boy. Doing that to just kind of stabilize the whole thing for them. Okay. So there you have it. We've gone over 4 things. We've gone over how to pick up a horse's hoof and pick out the bottom of it. We've gone over the anatomy, like what you're looking at on the bottom of that hoof as you're picking out what the different structures are that you're cleaning around, and some things to look for to make sure all those are healthy and looking correct in the shoe and the nails and all of those things. We've talked about helping young horses or obstinate horses want to pick that leg up for you, and how to hold it and help support that and develop a little bit of a rapport with them so that becomes a habit that's easy. And then how to help beginner horsemen and women to jump in there and get a little more confidence, because that's probably one of the more intimidating things for people to learn how to do, is to pick up the hoof and pick it out, short of maybe putting the bridle on. Putting the bridle on is another really complicated, there's just a lot of leather straps with that. So picking out the horse's foot can and should be easy. Those are your tips on it. If you have any questions, leave a comment. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, HS Productions. HS stands for Heritage Stables. Check us out on Facebook. This is Peppy. This is Sunny. I'm Lindsay. Thank you so much for watching.